Showcasing that you know how to do what you say you can do in your coaching business is really critical when it comes to people making a decision on whether or not they're going to invest with you and become a client. Yet it can be really hard to, one, gather testimonials, but two, to showcase them, especially if you're in a position where you're working with people who don't want their boss to know they're working with you, or they don't want to be featured by name on your website. Now, there's something to be said about featuring, glorious images and full names and companies on your website to build trust. It goes a lot further than just some random person or a company who did this or just a random description. But that doesn't help you when you don't have those things available to you. And so in this episode, I wanted to dive into a few things. One, how to gather testimonials that work for you and showcase truly what you do and the transformation you provide. Two, how to showcase logos for organizations that you have done work for or that you are working with to showcase what you can do and who you've worked with versus individuals. And three, how to showcase those testimonials that you can't use names or positions or full names or things like that. So if you're struggling with any of those things to show authority on your website and in your social media posts and for your marketing in general, you're going to want to stay tuned. If we haven't met yet, I'm Elisa Connor. This is the Marketing Menagerie, and every week we dive into tactics and topics that align with the marketing that you're already doing to make it stronger and convert more people into clients. So this week we're talking about testimonials and building authority. More often than not, what happens with testimonials is people forget to even collect them. And then they go back when they're getting their website redone, 3, 6, 9 months later or longer, and they want to gather testimonials. Well, that is a giant pain in the you-know-what, because people are busy. They're not going to get back to you. It's not a priority. So implementing a process to gather testimonials, not only at the end of an engagement, but along the way, is not only a smart business move, but it's going to save you so much time in the future. And a recommendation that I give to my clients is that when you're collecting these pieces of data, that you create a central location to store that data so that when you outsource, collection, testimonial collection, or you're using the information for your website, or somebody needs it for a case study or whatever, there's a central location where all of those things live. And everybody's not running around going, I don't know where those things are. So many times I've worked with clients and with organizations that they have all these wonderful case studies and testimonials that they've gathered. Nobody can find them. They're lost on an old website or in a Google Drive that nobody has access to anymore, or whatever that might be. So when you're setting up those processes around your testimonials, make sure that you're creating a central location that you can add and delete access to, depending on what's going on with your team. You're not going to always want to have a contracted website designer have access to those files, but they might need access to them for a limited amount of time. So isn't it just easier to add them to the Google Drive, say, here's the testimonials, that's all you need access to. Once you pull what you need, we're going to, at the end of the contract, we're going to delete you. So, or just have that in the process somewhere. So speaking of collecting testimonials, especially if you have longer engagements. Now, a lot of times when you're working in the coaching and consulting space, you might have an engagement with somebody that lasts up to 2 years. After, 18 months to 2 years, there is no possible way that your client is going to be in the same circumstances they were in after working with you. And so we need to capture the changes and the transformation that's happening with those clients all along the way, because you don't go from broke and bottomed out to a billionaire. Like, it doesn't happen that way. It's not overnight. There's things that need to be done. And when we're documenting those things along the way, it does one of two things. One, it shows them the pathway of where they've been, because it's really easy to forget how much pain they were in, to forget what they were experiencing, and to forget, what life was like before they met you. And this encourages them to keep working with you and also showcases the things that you've done for them. And two, when you're gathering those testimonials along the way, you're not going to forget, because I don't know about you, but there's a lot of days I have so many things going on that I can't even remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what happened with this client and that client and this client. So if I'm not documenting those things along the way, I'm not going to remember the transformation. I'm not going to be able to use those stories and those tidbits that my clients share with me on my website and in my social media and in all of the different marketing avenues that I have going on if I don't capture them. And so capturing your testimonials is step one. Make sure you're capturing them and putting them in a central suppository so you know where they are, how to get to them, and so does the rest of your team. More often than not, when I start working with people and I say, hey, you need to gather some testimonials so that we can feature them in all of your marketing, there's a little bit of panic that sets in. And that's because people don't know how to ask for testimonials. So if that's you, I have 3 questions that are really going to help you out. Normally, when I work with clients, I give them these 3 questions and some other ones, but these are really the bulk of the things that you need to be asking. Number 1 is, what is the problem they're experiencing right now? How is it affecting their life? How is it making their life more challenging? And what are the consequences of, whatever this problem is? So if we're looking at an example of somebody that has an injury of some type, so they have a torn ligament in their ankle. And I'm going to use this example because I have had a torn ligament in my ankle, so it's easy for me to relate to. And so when I went into the doctor, I said, what really sucks is that I'll go play golf and like my entire foot hurts and it's my ankle swollen all the time. And like, I can't wear sandals. Like there was just all these random things that were bugging me. And it was like, something's wrong. Like I can't do the things that I really enjoy anymore because my foot always hurts. And so that was my problem. So then the next question you want to ask is, once you started working with them, is, what kind of relief are you getting from this problem? How has it changed within your business, within your personal life, whatever it is? So if, the next step for me would have been physical therapy, it would have been fantastic if they would have said, hey, how's the physical therapy working? Is it improving things? Is it not? That was not the next step for me. The next step for me was surgery. And so going down that pathway at the end of that journey, so the end of having surgery and recovery and physical therapy and all of those things, that office would have been really smart to say, okay, so, you were experiencing this, this, and this before you came in. It was affecting your golf game. You couldn't run anymore. Walking, like you like to walk every day and it doesn't work. You can't hike. Like, where are you at now? Nobody did that. But if they were smart, they would have, because they would have found some very interesting information from me. Do this with your customers, because there's a couple of things that go on here when you ask these questions. One, you're showcasing the things that are improving for them. So if they're having this problem and then along the way you're saying, okay, we did this, let's do a check-in. Where are we at with the biggest problem? Where are we at from where we started? And if they aren't seeing results, then you have the ability to pivot what you're doing so they do see results. And if they are already seeing results, or you have solved their problems, if this is the end of the engagement, then you can show them, hey, you were here, now you're here. Like, we did it. We met your goal. We were able to get you where you wanted to be. And they'll be celebrating that with you. And they're probably more than happy to talk about their experience because they're happy with you. And then the third question that most people don't ask, and this is a really powerful one because it showcases that you know how to do what you say you can do, and that the people you do it have done it with before are happy. That third question is, what would you tell other people about your experience of working with me? And this allows them to have the ability to frame that in their mind so that if they were going to refer you to someone else, they already have like how they would talk about it in their minds. And so going back to the foot surgery example, like if they would have said, hey, what would you tell other people about our office? I would have had a list of pros and a list of cons. But nobody asked. And so the benefit of having a list of pros and cons is that right away you have work to do that needs to be fixed and taken care of before it happens to another client. But when you don't ask the question, that leaves the door wide open for them to either one, not refer you to people, two, refer you poorly, or three, worst of all, leave you a review online that doesn't shine you in a favorable light. And we don't want that because that's a mess to clean up that nobody wants. And so when we ask those three questions, what's your biggest problem? Where are we at? Did we transform that problem into a win? And what was your experience overall like? That's a great way to build testimonials, not only from beginning to end, but all along the journey. And it's going to make very powerful case studies and quotes that you can pull, as well as testimonials that you can use in all of your marketing. And I'm going to give you an entire list of places you could use testimonials towards the end of the episode. So stick with me because we're going to get there. So next, let's talk about logos. Now, the truth about logos is everybody wants the big logos, the MSNBCs and the Harvard Business School and all of the different big name logos. TEDx is another one. They want all of those logos on their website. And then on the opposite extreme, you have people who don't have any logos and they have a little bit of FOMO and they're thinking, oh man, I don't have anything to feature on here. Well, there's good news and there's bad news. One, there's always a workaround to get logos if you really need them. And two, most people don't pay attention to the logos. Like, we like to think that the logos are really important because it strokes our ego a little bit. And we think, oh, I've been featured over here. But more often than not, it's like an op-ed that's hidden in the back of an episode or the back of a newsletter that nobody even read. And so a lot of times you'll see these logos like they've been featured here, but you go to try and find the feature and it's buried. Nobody can find it anywhere. And so I'm not saying don't do those things, but I'm saying if you don't have those things to prominently feature in your marketing, especially on your website, like, don't sweat it. You'll get there. What people are really looking for are the opposite answers to the questions we just asked in our testimonials. Number one is, do you understand my problem? Do you have any experience with my problem? Like, show me, that you've worked with people like me. And number two, can you actually fix my problem? Like, can you, here's what I'm going through. Can you fix it? And then number three is like, have you fixed it before? Because if you can't answer those three questions, it doesn't matter how many logos you have on your website. They're going to move on to somebody else that has showcased that exact storyline of what they're looking for. And so that's why those three questions we just talked about are so powerful, because if you answer those questions, your testimonial is going to read like a novel for them when they're experiencing the same problems that you just solved for your previous client. And so when you can answer those questions, you're nullifying their fears and showing them you mean business and you do business. And the nice thing is that you can tell that story without sharing somebody's name if they don't want it shared, or their company name, or any of those things. So if you don't have those logos and you don't have permission, which I highly recommend asking for permission before you do any of these things. But if you don't, or they can't give it to you for one reason or another, you can still tell the story of the transformation of the problem you solved and how you solved it without sharing any of their personal information. So I wouldn't be doing due diligence if I didn't tell you the things that you should absolutely not share without permission. It's really important to follow these guidelines, because if you don't, you could actually get into legal trouble, and we don't want to do that. And so the first thing is you don't want to share any personal information unless you have written consent to do so. And that can be as simple as an email like, hey, thanks so much for giving me your testimonial. I really appreciate it. Can you just respond to this and let me know that it's a-okay for me to put this in all of these places? And we'll go through the list in just a minute. It's towards the end of the video. So definitely steer away from any personal information, including name, job title, company name, any other data that they didn't approve in their communication to you when they gave you their testimonial. Don't quote people directly unless they have given you a specific quote that you can use on their website. This can be misconstrued, and sometimes people mean one thing and they say another. And so if it's not in their written words, we don't want to try and quote it. We want to get it exactly the way they want it said, or we want to weave it into a story so it makes sense and it's not sounding like it was directly said by that person. Because there's a fine line between the what's legal and what's not legal, and we don't want to cross the line. We don't want to put ourselves in jeopardy of being sued or having to remove it, or even worse, jeopardizing our online reputation. We don't want to share any confidential information or anything that would have been protected under a non-disclosure agreement. So any private company information, any private strategies, any systems or frameworks or anything like that, we don't want to talk about those things because one, it's really not relevant. Those specific pieces of information are really only going to be specific to that company. And so there's no need to share that. And two, you could really get yourself in the hot seat by sharing proprietary information. So we want to stay away from that as well. And then three, we don't want to ever talk about people negatively. It might feel good to say like this project really sucked, but we don't want to do that because one, it's damaging their reputation, and two, it kind of makes you look like a jerk. And so if you had a poor experience with a client, just try to look on the bright side. Like, what are the things that you learned from this? What are the benefits that they got out of it? Or if there aren't any, then just don't feature them. Just, set them aside and say, okay, that was an experience. I learned the lessons. Now I'm moving on. And we can move on without sharing the experience on our website or in our social media or any of our marketing. If it wasn't a good experience for both parties, we probably don't want to highlight it anyway. So the moral of the story is if you don't have permission, either ask first or just don't do it. And that goes for logos, that goes for direct testimonials, that goes for case studies, that goes for anything that you're going to share to promote your business. You really need I recommend written permission because when it's written, then you can, file it away and if need be, pull it out and share that in a courtroom or wherever else you might need to share it in the future. So moving on, one last thing I want to say about logos is I have a lot of clients who come to me in the beginning stages of their business and they've done a lot of work for larger corporations and they get a little bit twitchy when we talk about using the logos, from those organizations. So when it comes down to logos, it's really, you have to make your best call. Like if you worked there and you can actually prove your experience at a larger organization, then I think it's okay for you to use their logo as long as you're using it in integrity. You're not saying they were a client. You're saying like you would have a testimonial under it that said, hey, I worked for Wells Fargo and this is how long I was there and this is my experience. And I'm going to translate that experience into helping individual clients now. That's not lying. You're taking everything you learned and all of your expertise and the things that you acquired while being in that position, and you're going to apply them now to different companies and different business owners and whatever it is you're going to do. You don't want to say that you can do things that you never did or that you worked for organizations you never worked for, because that's lying and it will catch up to you and it can cause a lot of not only legal problems, but also reputation problems. So just do what you know is right and follow your own inner guidance to, make the best decisions about logos or not using logos or not using logos. So you may be wondering, okay, how do I put together a good testimonial? Well, there's a 5-part framework that is going to, if you use the 3 questions we just talked about, there's a 5-part framework that's going to help you actually organize that information. And the first thing is you talk about the organization. So if you can't use an actual name like say Wells Fargo or GE, what you can do is say a multi-billion-dollar organization that you worked with. I worked with a multi-billion-dollar organization and we did what? We solved their problem. So then you go into step number 2, which is what's the problem? I worked with a multi-billion or, a multi-million-dollar organization to help them get their new hires up to speed and being productive in in half the time. So it was taking 6 months for them to get up to speed and now they do it in 3 months. And so not only do you talk about the problem, like the problem is that they've hired these new people, but how you solved it. You've shortened the time that it takes them to get onboarded and up to speed. And so now they're doing it in half the time. And so you could even translate that to how much money that's saving them. Because now they're doing it in half the time. That means that they're more productive in half the time. And so they're adding to the bottom line, 3 times quicker. So the other part of that you might want to add in is like what actually changed. So you could talk a little bit. I wouldn't dive into the process a ton, but what you could do is say, onboarding was taking so long because there wasn't somebody that was up to speed with how it should be done. The previous person had left. There was no process in place. So we implemented a process. We put somebody in charge of that process. And now everybody knows exactly what needs to be done, including the new manager who's overseeing that new hire. And everybody's pleased as punch because everything is running more smoothly. People are getting up to speed. The new hire feels comfortable and they're more productive. At the end of the day, what I like to do is take that productivity, which is sort of a generic term, and relate it to numbers in some way, shape, or form. At the end of the testimonial, if possible, you want to translate that win. So, cutting the time for somebody to become productive in half. How did that relate to revenue? How did that relate to increased sales? Like if they're a new sales rep, and just, use a general percentage. So in general, new hires brought in 30% more sales than they did previously before we worked together. It could also be time. So time related, the onboarding process was cut in half or by 50%. So those are the 5 parts. Who is it that you helped? What was their problem? How did you solve it? What were the benefits of solving that? And how did that relate to some underlying business goal or financial number? That's it. It's easy to put these together, and case studies work the same way. You just get a little bit more detailed so that people can understand more about the project. Of course, if you're using case studies, you want to follow the advice I gave above and make sure you're getting permission from the organization and the person that you're working with to use the information in the case study. You don't want to just wing it. Okay, so people get a little freaked out about numbers and using numbers. And so I want to talk about how to effectively use numbers and also CYA, because a lot of my clients are like, hey, I don't want to say that because it's not every time. And I was like, well, no, there's no guarantee that it's going to be the same for one client as it was for another client because they have totally different businesses. And so there are some tips to keep those numbers more general. And I wanted to share those with you in case you struggle with numbers and you're like, well, I don't know the exact amount, but it was somewhere around here. So the big one is, as I just talked about, is use percentages. So when you can convert, so if they had a $50,000 a year increase, just, where were they before? Was it $10,000? That's a 400% increase because they started at 10K and now they're at 50K. 400% is a pretty big number. And so when you're using percentages, it's much easier than just saying, I guarantee that you're going to make, $50,000 more, because you don't know where people's businesses are, and you don't know what the effect of them working with you is going to be until it's done. The other one is to use a range. So if you, typically work with people and they see between a $1 and $600,000 revenue increase, then just use the range. People, can be anywhere in between that. It's going to give people an idea if they're in the right spot. Because if they're a $1 billion company and they're only seeing 1 to 600,000, percentage of revenue change, that's probably not going to appeal to them. That's way too low for that size of organization. But this does a great job of also helping your clients identify if you're the right fit for them. And so when you're using those numbers, think about how you want to showcase those and if it's going to appeal to the people you want to work with most. The other one is, like, accountants would hate this, but just round up. Like, don't do 23.7%. No. So nobody talks like that. Nobody wants to do that. Just make it 24 or even 25%. Nobody's going to go check your math. And this is marketing. This isn't accounting. Accountants care because they have to. Marketers just make it work. And so just round up and use the, whatever you're comfortable with. If it's 23.7%, just make it 24% or 25%. It's going to be close enough. Then the last 2 are, you want to focus on the amount of time that was saved by something, because people really purchase for 3 reasons. 1 is money, like it's going to save them money. 2 it's going to save them time, or three, it's going to help them in some sort of health related way, lose weight, get stronger, whatever it is. But usually those are the three categories. So if you can show somebody that it's saving them, 10 hours a week to work, through this process with you, or that you've saved an organization this many hours per year, you can actually convert that into a financial savings as well, because time always equals money. And so if you've saved, say, an HR staff 20 hours a week by implementing whatever processes it is that you help them with, then you multiply that by the average salary of the HR director or whoever it is that is, you're helping through the process. And that gives you your financial goals. And then you have two numbers you can throw in there. And then the last is you can always do before and after. And you see this a lot, especially in very visual products. So the one that comes to mind is bathroom transformations. I don't know why everybody's transforming their showers or why they keep sending me ads for that, but it's always like the shower looks like this grungy shower that's in a hotel from like 1976. And then it's all of a sudden this beautiful marble shower. And so tell the story as it's applicable to your business and the service you provide. But before and afters are very powerful, obviously, because I remember an ad that I saw, earlier in the week. And now the part you've all been waiting for. Kidding. Where to use your testimonials? Well, the most obvious place to use them is on your website. And you see them a lot on websites, and there's a reason. It's because it helps build authority and trust so that people start moving forward and doing business with you. I would also use them on social media. If possible, I really like to tell the story of the client that I've worked with and then share a quote, if I have permission, with their image as the featured image on the post. But behind the post, the actual, testimonial is like telling a little bit more of the story using the questions that we referenced above. So definitely on social media, definitely on your website, but also if you're speaking. Like if you're speaking and you're up there and you're talking about a process or you're teaching part of your framework, if you can utilize a testimonial that shows, hey, they implemented this framework and this was their result, that's super powerful in getting people to move forward. When you can do that and it's appropriate to whatever it is you're talking about, I highly recommend using testimonials in that way as well. But if you can't document, starting from the beginning, document exactly what's happening, it's going to be harder to tie that into that specific part of your framework. So document as you go. The other powerful place that you can use this is in sales conversations, whether that's you or you have a team of salespeople. When you can empower them with success stories, or you can add those into not only your proposals, but your sales conversations, it shows people, hey, I worked with this person and this was their experience. They're in the same spot you were, and now they're here. That goes a lot further in getting to the yes than just, randomly saying, we do this for whoever, and it might work for you, it might not. I mean, it's a lot harder to prove that you can do the things you say you can do if you don't have any proof. And so adding those in there automatically and then bringing them up in a conversation that you're having with a new client or a new potential client really helps smooth that road to getting them to trust you faster. So at the end of the day, using those testimonials appropriately, like you don't want to just throw them anywhere, but the more you can share the testimonials and the people that you've helped and the results of what it is like working with you, the quicker you're going to build trust with people who don't know you or people who are thinking about working with you. So testimonials are super powerful in creating not only authority, like what you say and you do what you say you can do, but it also already paves the way because you are showing you've already done it with other people. And that's part of the hump that a lot of new business owners and new coaches and consultants specifically struggle with, is they just don't have the experience, or they're not telling the right story about the experience that they do have. So when you can, gather it, use it, and put it as many places as you can. In each of these episodes, I include an action plan because without action, you're not going to see results. So my action plan for you is to go and look at, your top couple testimonials and put it through the 5 questions that we talked about when creating a testimonial. Like, what's the company? What was their problem? How did you solve it? What were the results? Add in the numbers. The numbers are a really important part. So once you have that written and you haven't made anything up and it's nothing that would get you in trouble, then put it on LinkedIn. Like, see what happens when you put it out there as a post. Tell the story of your client. Use the quote if you can. Otherwise, get creative with how you're using a visual to support your story. See what kind of engagement you get from the people in your network and see if anybody responds. I'm betting that someone will say something. And not only that, but it stays there forever. And so even if nobody does engage right away, because maybe, you haven't been on LinkedIn or you haven't been posting and it takes a while for things to get warmed back up, it still lives there. And you may not be able to use it as an actual recommendation on LinkedIn because somebody didn't write that out. But that's another great place to pull testimonials if people have left you recommendations. Some people forget about it. And I'm like, that's a great place to go get, your recommendations are a great place to get your testimonials, especially if it's people that have worked with you and have had results with you. Then after you put it on LinkedIn, make sure it's added to your website, whether you're adding it on there or your website developer is, because again, if they see it on LinkedIn, they go to your website and they're like, hey, here's this testimonial, or multiple testimonials that are all saying the same thing. You're tackling those objections without doing a lot of heavy lifting. And last but not least, slip it into a sales conversation next time you're meeting with someone and you're giving them a proposal. What do you have to lose? I mean, if you can have those stories top of mind, especially your top 1, 2, 3 testimonials that really showcase who you are, what you do, and shine you in a really great light, it's going to carry that conversation into the mode of, I don't know if this is going to work for me, to, hey, wait a minute, those people sound like exactly what I'm going through. And you helped them do what? Because it's engaging and it's interesting and it's actually showing, instead of just a logo, what you can do and how you can do it for them too. If you need help writing these stories or putting these stories together and you're just not sure how to gather the information or how to focus it in a way that gets people interested or moving forward, I have great news. You can book a free strategy call with me using the link in the description below, and it's also tagged as the first comment. In that 30-minute session, we will walk through exactly what you need to do, what you need to say, and even if there's time, talk about specific people that you've worked with and weave those into stories. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I appreciate you being here. If you've enjoyed this content, I would love for you to hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed and you want to stay in touch and make sure you receive content that comes out every week, last but not least, if you found this valuable and you think someone else would too, I would love for you to share it with them so that we can help other business owners be more successful, feature their testimonials, and gain more traction with the clients they want to work with. In the meantime, be well, stay safe, and take care. I'll see you soon.